This is story time about the time that we got robbed in Rio, Brazil.
Yeah, well, it was just a regular night. It was a Saturday. We felt like going out, dancing, walking around, having a good evening, and that's what we were having. We were pretty much out and just dancing, having delicious caipirinhas, enjoying the weather, and it was around like maybe 5:30 when we decided to leave.
We looked out the window and we're like, holy shit, the sun is out. And we're like, it is time to go. And at that point, we had been, first of all, just a little context, like, we are all individuals who are like well trained when it comes to like being, what's the word? Vigilant, right? About our stuff. So we're like, okay, they told us about Rio. We've all lived in Mexico City. We're like, yeah, las sabemos. We know it, you know?
Yeah.
We were being careful. I mean, I had my phone strapped in my fanny pack tight the whole night.
Mm-hmm.
We've been to Rio before. I actually, last time I went to Rio, they tried to rob my purse. And they couldn't. The latch got stuck on the wrist and they just ran. So yeah, we were well aware of what happens in Rio.
Yeah, I mean, countless warnings. I think for the pretty much the whole trip we had been like very vigilant. So I feel like, it was 5:30, we saw the light, we had ordered an Uber, we were just like, all right, we're gonna leave, we're gonna get into the Uber, and that's that, right? It was daytime. It was, I mean, the evening, the slash day was winding down, and we were leaving, and that's when kind of stuff started to get really weird.
So we're walking out. Okay, the Uber is already like a minute away. We're actually walking out, and two Brazilian men are like walking with us, and they're like big dudes. And so we like we're walking together, just like talking it up. Sam was like, Uber's here. Like, okay, cool.
Bye.
Was a little bit closer to the Uber, I think, but the Uber started driving away. We're like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
So we're all kind of like chasing the Uber.
Yeah. I remember Sam saying like, that's our Uber, and I remember all of us running
I remember
after the Uber.
The Uber driver saw us. I remember because it was daylight out. I remember he turned his neck. I remember this moment, saw us, and then just speeds away. But he books it. Like, he goes fast.
Yeah.
We're all like, what the fuck? So we all start running after
Chasing it. Yeah.
We're like, Uber.
Right.
Yeah. I had my phone out. I was laughing. Or was I like having a silly night? I was taking a selfie because I love taking selfies. And I see, like, I have my phone now, and then all of a sudden, like, I just kind of like, my phone is gone. And then I like see this guy driving away on a motorcycle, and I'm like, kind of like in shock, trying to figure out what happened. And I'm just like, oh damn, I said to myself, he took my phone. So then I turn around and I tell them that were behind me, I'm like, they took my phone.
And then I just have, Alex and I both have this memory of Darlene being like, they stole my phone. And we're just like, I think it was probably 10 seconds or less in that, like, we're processing that information. We're like, what's going on? And then I feel this like tug on my neck, like a hard tug. It hurt, and it was just like, and my fanny pack ripped off. The strap broke, and the next thing I see, this guy's running away with my purse and the phone. Two guys.
So add to context to that. When Darlene yelled out like they took my phone, we're like, what the fuck? And Sam and I are like this close to each other, and then like 4 or 5 Brazilian men kind of start getting surround us, and they're like in Portuguese, being like, oh my god, what happened? Like, what happened? I immediately get a bad vibe, so I'm like, no. I'm like, back the fuck up. And all of a sudden I hear Sam yell, and and I turn around, and you're like, he took my purse. And then I see a dude running, and then Sam starts running.
Yeah. So while this is happening, I just like see my phone speed off in the distance. I like don't even turn fully around. I'm just like in shock, seeing what's happened. And I already see Alex and Sam like running towards the other corner. We were on this street, and then like it's kind of like a fork, so they're already on this corner. I'm kind of running. I'm like, I'm not gonna catch up to a motorcycle. They're running away. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I just kind of stayed put. I was in shock. I was kind of like looking around. I just remember seeing like a bunch of people kind of just like standing around and like looking. And then all of a sudden, like very quickly, like I just see Sam and Alex like turn the corner. We all just come to each other and we're like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, they took my phone. And then that's when I found out that Sam's stuff got stolen, because I just see them running and I'm like, something must have happened, but I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't know. Like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, if one of their phones also got stolen, they also had it out. Because mind you, I had mine like this, so I'm just like, I had heard of like, oh, people get their shit jacked, like they'll come up on motorcycles, whatever. I'm like, okay, like mind you, I'm like, all right, yes, I got jacked, whatever. But then when Sam's like, no, they tore mine off, I was like, okay, that's something else. And then we're like, yo, but the Uber's there. We're trying to figure out what happened. At this point, Alex is like, you know what? I'm going to try and call an Uber, because we see people kind of start walking towards us. Oh. And then...
Yeah, so basically, let's go back to us running after the dude. So, because I start running because I see Sam running. And by the way, we're wearing sandals. Okay?
Chanclas.
We're
full force in chanclas.
Like, so, like, I'm literally, like, running and, like, it's like, you know? And I'm like, fuck, I hope these don't rip off right now.
We were running for our lives.
Yes.
Like, that initial fight or flight reaction where you get attacked, and my first instinct was chase that guy.
Yeah.
It was a hard tug. Like, it was an attack. Like, I still have a mark on my neck from how far is it. So when you get attacked, like, that human instinct is run after the person. So I start running, and then Alex sees me, and then we both start running full force in sandals. We ran for what, like a block?
Yes.
We ran for a block.
Yeah.
And then there were two guys running. The guy who had the phone, my fanny pack in his hand, jumps on a bicycle with the guy who was waiting for him on the corner. So they had it all planned out.
Yes.
He was waiting for him already with the phone.
And there was the one dude, so there was the guy that had Sam's bag, and then Sam's running, and I'm running behind her, and then there's a dude that's running behind the other dude who's watching us to see if we're gonna catch up or not. That fool booked it. Like, we weren't gonna catch him, on top of the fact that, like, he jumped on a fucking bike too, like yours, and, like, just took off. So at that point, we're turning around. There's a neighbor that's like, what happened, right, in Portuguese. We're like, oh, you know, I don't know, whatever, like, took our shit. So at that point, we're turning back. We meet up with Darlene in the corner, and, like, there's hella, mostly men around.
Yeah, and I feel like they were just kind of in shock. We're like, what the hell? Like, it's broad daylight, so it's like we could see bien. Like, it was just like one of those things where you're in shock and you're trying to figure out what happens. Because mind you, we were having a good time. Like, it was a fun night. We've been dancing. Like, you know, we had been as careful as we could have been, and it's just in one of those moments where you're just like, what just happened?
And there are a lot of people out at this hour too. It's not that we were the only ones on the street. We go back and there's this whole like mob of people. Like, how many people would you guess were out?
At least on that corner, 10.
Yeah, I would say more. I would say like 20, 25. Because there was like people leaving the club. There was like people outside. There was vendors. Like, the parties were still going on. Obviously, had died down. Because so we had been walking around like at night, and it was like pretty packed, right? So we're starting to reason. We're like, okay, you know, we had our phones out all night, which, yes, again, they don't suggest, but we had been vigilant. We'll take a photo, guardarlo. But again, we were ready to jump on the Uber. Like, the Uber was there. So in our minds, it's like, okay, you know, we're just going to get into the Uber, you know? And little did we know that Uber is going to drive off and then put us in this very dangerous situation where all of a sudden, you know, very quickly our stuff gets stolen. All of these people are just kind of watching. A lot of men just kind of start looking at us, start coming close to us.
So so that's the point when we're back, and it's like the three of us, and those, like, that group of people that were like, oh, what happened? At that point, I'm like, fight or flight had me fight like the entire time. So then some guys were like, what happened? They were getting closer, and I said, fuck you, go fuck yourself. And they're like, and they're yelling something back in Portuguese, like, basically, go fuck yourself too. So I'm literally like, don't get close, like, don't get close to us. So then Sam and Darlene, like, in front of me, I'm over here, like I need to get an Uber, like, I need to get the hell out of here. So then, like, I asked for an Uber. It's like 2 minutes away, and then one of the homeboys on the other side, like, looks at me, and he's like calling my name, and he goes, and he basically starts saying in Portuguese, like, I actually don't think he was one of, like, the robbers. He's looking at me, and he goes, hey, like, watch them, they're coming back, like, watch them. And I thought, fuck, like, at this point, like, they jacked both their stuff, like, they're coming after mine. Yeah. So then at that point, it's just like, fuck this Uber that we're waiting for. There's a taxi, and we need to get in the fucking taxi and just go.
Yeah. So we get into the taxi. Mind you, I'm still like, Sam and I are still in shock. Alex says that, like, she is trying to find the address, doesn't know the address, and so we just told him, like, you know, we're staying in Ipanema, and the driver just, like, leaves, right? So this whole time, obviously, you can imagine, you know, we're in shock, our phones, getting to the house, canceling everything. We get onto our phones. We see where the device is. It's not that far from where we were at the bar. This was in Lapa, by the way. I don't know if we mentioned that, but
This is like the party zone of Rio.
Yeah, so
Not a favela.
this was not at a
Not a
this was
favela.
at a
It's
party
like
zone
the
in
party
Rio
zone.
with a lot of people out. Like it wasn't anywhere, that. Mind you, also like we're all very well traveled. Like for those of you that know us, like the type of people that we are. Like we're seasoned travelers. We're seasoned people that like to go out and have fun. So we are usually very careful and like very vigilant. So the fact that this happened to us was like. It was shocking. I mean, I think just by chance it's gonna happen at some point. But the fact that when we started kind of like sitting down and like processing, because when this type of thing happens to you, I'm sure y'all know when you get your phone stolen or something happens, like you're constantly like processing it in ways. You're like, oh my God, and this and then that and then that. But then when we started putting all these pieces together, we're like, no, this was not just like a random like, oh, we're leaving and like, oh, let's just like jack their stuff because they're like, they're not paying attention. Like this was like definitely premeditated. This was they had been watching us, and this was something that was so well coordinated because okay, they could have, I had my phone out, they could have, if some guy was driving on a motor, he could have easily taken it. It could have been anybody, right? But then the fact that like Sam's bag got ripped
while we were looking at Darlene and being
Yeah.
like, what happened? Like, this was super coordinated.
The fact that the Uber sped off, mind you, again, there's people on the street, but the location was there. Sam saw him. We were clearly the ones waiting. So we're like, okay, this is something else. This is something that was like very well planned. And slowly that's when we start putting the pieces together, and that's when we start getting more information.
And then we're on, so we don't have phones. So I'm trying to coordinate calling my bank cards, everything on my computer. Fortunately, I was still logged into WhatsApp on my computer. So the night before, we had met these two guy friends from, where were they, California?
Korea? Who's from Korea?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
The other guy, but
I don't know.
these two guys.
Yeah.
We were gonna hang out with them on Sunday. So they had given us their contact info, and because I was logged onto WhatsApp on my computer, we had exchanged contact info on WhatsApp. So I get a message from the guy on Sunday being like, I forget what he said, like, did you guys make it home okay? Maybe it was about hanging out on Sunday, like, are you guys gonna meet up with us? I forget. And I was like, no, we got our phone stolen. Like, we kind of just gave him a rundown of the story, and then he's like, oh, he was like, we got our phone, he's like, we got our stuff stolen too. He's like, but we got attacked, like they punched us in the face. And I was like, what? Almost play by play the same thing that happened to us. They were walking to their taxis. He said that right before getting to taxi, these guys ambushed them and punched them in the face, tried to take their phones. They had an interesting lesson for us. They carried fake wallets. So they give them the fake wallets and they run. So, and then he had a phone, because he goes out in Brazil so much, he had a string attached to his phone. He said that the phone, they weren't able to take the phone because of the string. And then they were fighting, I don't know what happened.
There was a struggle. There was a physical struggle there.
But mind you, too, one thing that we haven't said is that we were with those guys at that same bar. So, like, they left and they got their shit jacked. They got punched in the face minutes after we had just left.
Yeah. So this is just something that I think also, like, as we kind of go through the motions and think back on it, there's so many different aspects that it just really makes us think that this is something that obviously happens a lot, but it's a way that they steal people's stuff. Because apparently, this is something that is known, that like an Uber, I think they mentioned with like Uber, no? That they would basically accept your ride and then just don't stop. And it makes sense, right? Because, okay, we're leaving the club. They know that people are going to be out on their phones looking for the Uber. And you know what happens, like when you're looking for an Uber, you have on your phone and you're like checking the location. You're like, oh wait, is it that one? Is it that one? Like, where is it? Like, oh, are you going to call it? Are you going to message it? And in that moment, like the Uber never stopped. Like if you think about it, like any Uber that you're getting is going to stop or is going to like, look for you as well. But this one never stopped, and it just kind of like kept speeding. So that in and of itself is super strange. Then the fact that I got my phone stolen, and then immediately Sam, and then the fact that they already had a guy waiting for them to like speed off on a bike, and that there was people watching, and then the fact that these other two guys that left probably like minutes after we did got physically attacked while they were also going into their transportation is pretty wild.
And So I think it's good for us to say what are some like lessons learned from this.
Yeah.
That we can share with y'all. Anyone wants to start?
I mean, I'll start with the Uber one. Uber is not safe, and Uber is not watching out for their customers. When I told our friends and some of the locals who live in Brazil about what happened, they were like, Uber was 100% in on this because this has been happening in Brazil. Like this has been happening where the Uber drivers are coordinated within the robbery. They accept rides from foreigners because they can see the face when they accept your ride. They know where they're going to be at. They go as if they're going to pick you up, and then they drive away, and then you get ambushed. Like, this is a thing that's happening in Brazil, apparently.
Yeah.
So I reported it to the Uber. Everyone's like, report it. Uber has not been doing anything to cancel these people's drivers. They need to get their accounts canceled. I reported this. This was like how many days ago? I have gotten zero response from Uber. None.
And you got charged.
Oh, and I got charged a cancellation fee.
And the Uber itself canceled.
Yeah.
The Uber, yeah.
And he saw us.
Yeah. And so I'm really upset. I mean, I'm really disappointed. And also, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's Uber. It's a big corporation. But they have not done anything. So, like, we cannot trust these companies. They're not watching out for us. Be careful.
Yeah.
You're not safe in an Uber. Like, you have to be on alert all the time.
Yeah, I think for me, a lesson learned is, I'm the type of person that I will go out, have a good time, make friends. And I like to be out late. Like, it's no surprise that the sun was out, right? But also, I think it's just like a reminder for me, especially all of us like to solo travel here. And I think that it's such also a wake-up call and a blessing that this hadn't happened to us before. But I think it's also just a reminder that when you're out, and of course this happens like in your own hometown and places that you're familiar with, but especially if you're traveling abroad and maybe if you don't speak the language too, like be very mindful at the time that you're going home at. Because we were also thinking about it, like we had our phones out like at night, like, but there was a lot of people on the street, there was a lot of traffic, so we're also like, of course this wouldn't happen at that time because they wouldn't be able to coordinate that same type of thing, right? Because there's so many people, like you wouldn't be able to run through the crowd, you wouldn't be able to like speed off on a motorbike. So I think just like being very, very mindful and keeping that, I think is my lesson too. It's like knowing when to leave, like, because the parties will always exist, you will always have, moments to just like have fun, but I think also just like really knowing when to go home is important, and just like keeping that in mind, and also like getting your bearings about you. Like before you leave, you're like, okay, I'm in this place, who's around me, I'm gonna exit, I'm gonna change the vibe, I'm gonna change the scenery, how am I feeling, where's all my stuff, where are all my friends, how are we feeling, and then like exit. Because this just happened in a matter of like this happened within less than 10 minutes, so it was like very fast.
I would say like 2. And I have 2 lessons. One, we had gotten some food for like a woman earlier that night who had told us there were a lot of like our friend who lives in Brazil was always telling like, yo, check your shit, don't take it out. There was like a lot of reminders, right? We got some food for this woman and she literally was like, don't be here. Like in her Portuguese, she goes, get out of here. She literally was like, get out of this section, go that way, go that way, go that way. And she literally pointed at the cell phones, because Sam and Darlene had their phone out. She's like, put them away. She's like, put them away. We're like, oh, okay, thank you, right? So that was 1. 2, especially if you're someone who's fight or flight, do not fight. Like, I think one thing that like Sam and I talked about after when we started chasing the guy was like, okay, yes, let's say, there's 2 of us, there's 1 dude, but this is coordinated. So this guy had homies at every fucking corner. So let's say we did catch up to him. Then what would happen? We'd start fucking fighting for a phone. They would pull out shank. And I had friends who used to live in Brazil who said, no, girl, like I know folks that have literally gone shanked because they're trying to get their phone backs. So I think it's a good reminder for me who I'm like, immediately I'm just like, yo, let's throw it down. Don't do that. I think actually the patriarchy worked in our advantage this time because we were women, that they didn't punch us in the face like they did to the other guys that we met. So like I know, and during that time, like you are feeling some kind of way, just like, hey, it's a phone, it's a material thing. As long as we're good and we're healthy and we're like in one piece, that's what matters the most. But definitely don't chase them.
Don't chase them. Don't chase them.
Yeah. Let it go. It's just a phone.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. Like, obviously, it's taken time out of our day. Like, it's an inconvenience, but honestly, when we look back at it, so many other things could have just been more intense. If the Uber's in on it, like, we know kidnappings happen all the time. Like, who's to say they couldn't have taken us? They could have easily like taken me on the moto, like anything. Like, they could have. While all of this is happening, like, people could have ran over. Like, you just don't know all of the things, like, in that moment that could have happened. So, you know, I think it's just like a reminder that yes, material, you know, things, you know, are an inconvenience and they cost money and it's time, energy, and all of that. But when it comes down to it, the fact that we were for the most part like physically unharmed, I think is just something that we are grounding in, and that we are reminding ourselves that everything else can be replaced, but our integrity can't. And especially if we're abroad, you know, if we don't speak the language, it's just like a very dangerous situation, and it's unfortunate. But I think you know, this is something that could happen anywhere. So we don't hold it against Brazil, we don't hold it against Rio, although I'm a little salty, but you know, it's something that it just happened, and we hope that just sharing our experience can make y'all a little bit more vigilant, just be aware, because when they want to steal our things, like, they get coordinated. Like, this wasn't just like a regular, like, you know, pickpocket, like, oh, like, you know, let me pocket check you, let me get your stuff. This was like a very well coordinated event. And we're also very thankful that Alex's phone didn't get stolen either, because that was the way that we were able to get home, that we're able to like contact our families. Because if that would have happened, we don't know what we would have done. And they clearly were there to get all of our stuff.
Yeah.
All of our stuff.
Yeah. And like, and I didn't even know, we don't speak Portuguese, so I didn't even know how to say the address without being able to actually see it, right? Like, I needed a number and that was it. So I think one thing too is make sure that you have those certain things like memorized, especially when you're abroad, especially if you don't know the language. And like, even when you're packed, you gotta stay alert, because it could happen to anyone. So just stay vigilant.
Yeah, just stay vigilant.
Any hour too. Our friend called it the witching hour. She's like, you girls were out at that hour. Apparently, like, that's the time people get robbed in Brazil. However, she said people get robbed in Brazil everywhere at any time, even in the safer neighborhoods it's happening. So I think, I mean, one of the lessons for me is like, it could happen to anyone. Like, none of us are invincible. Like, we got so many warnings from the universe, and it's one of those things that you just think, no, it's not going to happen to me. You know, I'm being safe. I have my phone here, and we're doing all the right things. But even then, in the matter of 10 seconds, walking to an Uber, we weren't being careless. We weren't wandering on the street drunk in the middle of the night. No, we were literally just leaving where we were going to get our Uber that had pulled up. And that's when it all happened. I mean, that could happen to anyone.
It literally, it was a statistic. Like, we looked it up. Yeah. And in Brazil, 2 phones get stolen every second. So this was a statistic right here.
We became a statistic, and you know what? It's okay. I had a fun time with my girls. It was such a fun night. We were just dancing and just like laughing. And I think wherever those photos and selfies and video of us are in the ether, like, that is an offering to the universe. And y'all know that they were amazing. But you know, we still had a very good time, and you know, thankfully it just ended up in this crazy ass story. So
yeah, y'all should have seen those photos and videos. They're gonna live in our memories.
They're gonna live in our memories forever. We're gonna do a little recount too of the types of videos that we had. But
we'll describe them.
We'll describe them. They'll live in our memory.
Anything else?
Carry a fake wallet.
Carry a fake wallet.
Yeah. And don't fight.
Maybe a little dumb phone. Don't fight, and party safe.
Party safe.